Hey, welcome back to Comeback Stories with Sunil Robert. I am so excited to share about how you can find life's purpose, live a rich and joyful life, and go and impact the people around you. In today's episode, I want to explore three dimensions of living out a purpose filled life. The first element is about growth. Many people go through life, but they don't grow through life. There's a fine distinction there. We go through life, we have birthdays after birthdays. We grow old chronologically, but we don't grow old emotionally, mentally, physically. You might say, hey, my growth spurts are done. I'm at a point where I will no longer grow. I've reached my growth limit. But the limit that has stopped your physical growth should not stop you from growing into an intellectual giant or an emotionally mature, sound individual. In my view, growth happens on three levels. One is the physical, which I will talk to about vitality and physical wealth and health that people are talking about, and wellness and so on. But I'll come to that towards the end. But the more important element of growth or going through life and growing through life is about growing intellectually. In fact, I'm so much of a learning addict, if there's a thing of a positive connotation to the word addict. You could easily classify me as a learning junkie. Why is it important to be a learning junkie? Because the world we are living in today is changing by the day. And if you're not a learning junkie, you'll become a Jurassic creature very soon. Creatures that don't adapt perish. People who don't adapt to technologies, to the trends around us, perish because you're stuck in a world that has changed far beyond your imagination. For example, when the computers were invented, some computer manufacturers said there is only a world market for about a handful of users for computers. True famous last words were never spoken better than that. Only a handful of users for computers? That was in the 60s and 70s. Fast forward 50 years later, we have pocket-sized computers in our hands. Imagine the quantum jumps in paradigms people had to come, just the miniaturization of electronics, the ability to innovate so much that you're bringing this vast amount of computing power into the palm of your hand. Now, you might say, oh, I've grown enough. I spend all my day on the phone. That is not intellectual growth. What you're doing with your phone can determine how intelligent or how much of growth you have accomplished. For example, whenever I speak to young people, I ask them, are you smarter than your smartphone? Are you smarter than your smartphone? For example, if you're addicted to the phone and you're not able to let go of the phone, who's controlling you? Are you controlling the phone, or the phone is controlling you? Anytime I need to get my kids' attentions, I'll just tell them, hey, if you don't show up for dinner in the next 5 minutes, the Wi-Fi is going to be turned off. Within 2 minutes, kids are at the dining table. Why? Because they don't want to be disconnected from the content that's coming on their phones. We as parents are struggling with young people, and I'm sure you are also struggling as young people to engage with people of the other generation without having to discuss this whole notion on the conflict around the phone. If you're smart, smarter than your phone, that is, you will use your phone for intellectual growth. You'll use it for what is now called a trend in the world of learning called micro learning. You will use every single moment, whether you're on the train, whether you're just sitting waiting at a doctor's appointment, or you're waiting for a friend. You'd use your phone instead of mindlessly scrolling through other people's feeds and doing whatever else you're doing. If you make learning a habit, you'll have intellectual growth. Among all the thousands of photographs that I have in my photos or Google Photos, you'll be surprised to know most of them are micro learning screenshots that I have built over the years. Why? Because human learning is a never ending, relentless cycle. You have to be learning multiple things. And in this day and age of shriveled attention and fractured attention, you have to possibly hear or read or reflect on the same thing 3 or 4 times before it actually becomes a concept familiar to you. So it's important that you have a very concerted idea of what your intellectual growth ought to be. Do you have a strategy to learn intellectually? For example, back in the day when we were reading books, the old school books, you remember a book, the old fashioned one that the parents talk about and maybe your college professors talk about? The good old books, I used to try and aim for one book every single week, which meant at the end of the year, I would always, at least at a minimum, have 52 books against my list of reading. Now, why is it? Is it a competition that I'm running after, or is it a scoreboard that I'm keeping? No. When you delve into the mind of an author, you are actually grappling with their ideas, their worldview, their presentation of ideas will challenge you. And so you could either reject it, and when you reject it, you'll have good reasons to reject that ideas. Your own ideas get sharper. And so your worldview becomes clearer. A clear sign of growth is a clear worldview, that you're able to articulate what you believe in, what you stand for, where your vision is, where your purpose is, and then you're answering in the light of what these ideas represent in your worldview. So, for example, if you get into a job interview kind of a situation, your answers come flowing like a river simply because you've engaged with books, ideas, and you reflected them and you made your ideas collide with the ideas of these authors, and your ideas are that much stronger. So you have a strong worldview. So a clear sign of intellectual growth is a strong and a lucid worldview. The second one is, if you are really truly growing intellectually, you'll be pursuing new challenges. Many people do the same job, same task, years after years after years, and still feel burnt out without any novelty, without any excitement, without any joy in their lives. The French phrase, joie de vivre, means the joy of existence, the joy of life is quenched because they're going through like a robot going through the motions. So a clear sign of intellectual growth is pursuit of new challenges. What is the last time you did something for the first time? When was the last time you did something for the first time? Recently, a friend of ours introduced us to rock climbing. We started off obviously at an indoor gym, but I realized rock climbing is so much fun. And of course, I was getting my posterior kicked by all the young people in that gym. But for me, that I've never tried this and that I'm able to do some kind of an activity for the very first time is enough for me to start thinking. What did I do immediately after that? I came home and I started Googling about what exercises do I need to start doing to build my upper body, because my upper body is a clear element in lifting myself up when I go into this rock climbing mode. So that's just an analogy of what you need to do when you pursue a new challenge. When you pursue a new challenge, It'll push you out of your comfort zone and put you in a discomfort zone. When you are in a discomfort zone, all the skills, the habits, the attitudes, and everything that helped you survive at the comfort zone will not work, and you will set for yourself a new paradigm, a new idea, a new skill set, and then you are in that area enjoying yourself. Suddenly, this adds a dimension of excitement to your life. So that's the second element. Intellectual growth always propels you for new challenges. From 52 books a week, I actually got closer to 100 books a week. Now, what happens is there are many people who do notes and who do elaborate summaries of what they read and so on. But for me, a book is like a meal. It gives you strength, it gives you ideas, it leaves a good taste in your mouth, and then you're moving on. Unless it's a defining book that I have to go back and I have to reflect with it, I have to grapple with it. Books are meant to be like that. In fact, somebody said some books are meant to be swallowed. Some books are meant to be chewed, and some books are meant to be digested. Some books are meant to be swallowed. Some books are meant to be chewed. Some books are meant to be digested. And there are some books like that that grapple with your soul. So whenever I am recommending books, for example, I'm a big believer in the theme of resilience and grit and leadership and failure and so on and so forth. So when I am grappling with those topics, I go into all the authors who have done work around that, and I keep wrestling with those ideas because my personal and my pragmatic experience had to resonate with what these folks are talking about. So that's the second element. So intellectual growth means that you're always pursuing new avenues, pursuing new challenges. The third and final piece of that intellectual growth is an intellectual journey will make you an exciting person. You cannot sit on last year's knowledge. You cannot sit on, and it'll give you the humility to say, all these ideas that I held dear to me so far, they're no longer valid, and I'm trying to embrace this new paradigm. Just like in rock climbing, you cannot go to a higher level without letting go of this earlier grip. And that rock climbing metaphor is so true in your intellectual journey as well. You will never be able to grow to a new height if you don't let go of old paradigms and get into new levels. And that's where I want to introduce you to the element of failure. You see, intellectual growth can never truly happen until you hit bumps, setbacks, adversities, and failure. I've failed far too many times to count. In fact, I could be considered a resident expert on failure. But yet, despite all my failures, I never believed that failure is final. You are experiencing only a temporary setback. My way of defining failure is this, quite simple. Any day 6 feet above the ground is a great day. I let that sink in. Any day 6 feet above the ground is a great day. It's a winning day. You're ready for championship. You're ready for game time. Do you know there are about 5 million people currently in various hospitals would be glad to take your place in exchange for where you are, even if you're having the worst, miserable day of your life. So if you're reasonably healthy, able to get up, do your things, and sit and complain, you're already off to a start. Where your notion of failures have to be defined is, what can I learn out of this, which is linked to your intellectual growth? Your understanding of failure is linked to your intellectual growth. If you let failure or victory define you, you're not a winner. Because the moments you're winning, you're high, and the moments you're losing, you're crushed. That's no way of living. If you can treat victory and failure and defeat as imposters, said a very famous poet called Rudyard Kipling in his very famous poem, If. You ought to treat victory and failure as imposters. What will keep you going is this notion that you have a purpose to live for, and these failures are road bumps along the way. For example, I had an exciting weekend last weekend when I traveled to a different city and spoke to a bunch of young people and many families and had a great time of speaking, public speaking. But today morning, I had the crappiest days ever. Why? A lot of things went wrong. My sleeping pattern, my inability to get things done on time was dependent on somebody. Not a great day at all. But that will not define my energy levels. 2 weeks ago, to the day, we had a sudden loss of a friend's son, who's a young, up and coming, high achieving kid. Sure, we are all distraught, depressed, devastated, even with all our the loss of a young one. But having the right notion of what does life mean to you, what does time mean to you, what does victory mean to you, what does failure mean to you, will allow you to continue to wake up each morning with a grateful heart and go and seize the day. So, intellectual growth is a function of how you define failure. Till you actually stop trying, you're never truly a failure. There will always be a way. Winners will always find a way, even from the most hopeless of situations. That's why they're called winners. In fact, the resilience advantage comes to leaders who believe that you cannot be out. You could be down, but you can't be out. In fact, there's a very famous poem called The Man in the Arena, where the writer talks about how no matter how bruised and beaten you are, and you will be in life's battles, please don't think I am minimizing your current predicament. Please don't. I, if anything, can totally empathize with you because I know what it is to sleep on a hungry stomach. I know what it is to survive on water for days. I know what it is to be evicted from home to home and be subject to humiliating looks from passersby. I know what it is to be physically ill. I was involved in a massive motorbike accident, and for 2 years, I could not even walk straight. So I know a thing or two about pain. Twice I was close to committing suicide, so I know a thing or two about emotional pain. But despite all this, the lesson I want to give to you is failure is never final. If you stop trying to overcome, then that's when you've truly admitted failure. But if you're fighting, even if there's one impulse of fighting left, you will find a way. And the heavens reward people who are not willing to admit defeat, who are willing to say that I have a greater reservoir of strength that I will dip in and dig in and pull that out to overcome, and I'll fight for another day. That's the spirit that I'd like you to have. So if these come together, your intellectual growth will allow you to grow to newer heights. That's the intellectual part. The physical part is where I want to make a segue to that accident that I just referred a few seconds ago. As that motorbike accident pushed me to first an emergency room, and for 2 years of painful therapy, people said, I will never be able to walk straight and I will never be able to play any sport. Leave alone that, I'd never be able to even use a motorbike, which involved a kickstart. Before the electric ignitions came, bikes in India had kickstarters, which meant you use your right leg to kickstart and then you jump on it and then you go. Which meant I would only be confined to electric ignition bikes, which were predominantly used by girls. And that was a gender thing as well. But I want to tell you something that is so fundamental to winners' mindset. A winner will always find a way. A not so strong winner will find an excuse. The doctor said he can't walk. I wanted to prove the doctor's wrong. The doctor said he can't ride a bike. I got back to bikes. The doctor said he cannot get back to sports. Today I've run the top 20 marathons in the world. I don't say that to flex or just show off or anything. But if I could overcome physical limitations, anybody can do anything if you have a reasonably good body and a sound mind. You can be a winner. You can never let failure get to you and think that it is final, it is finished. It is never truly finished till you actually breathe your last. And when you do that, it's a different. Nobody expects anything out of you except the legacy of having tried to fight life's battles. That is held against you as a living tribute, even long after we are gone. So the point I'm making is failure is never final. So I want to ask you today, what habits are driving your intellectual growth and your physical vitality? When was the last time you hit the gym? Or when was the last time you went for a run? Or when was the last time you did something that made you feel that I feel strong? This whole notion of physical wellness is actually become an industry, a multi-billion dollar industry, because people have linked physical wellness to self-esteem. How you feel physically determines how you feel on the inside. So if you want to change the world, you start by changing yourself. And if you want to change how you feel, you start changing by how strong you are. Now, there are multiple schools of thought. Or do we do cardio? Do we do endurance running? Do we do strength and lifting? I don't want to get into that debate, but to me, as long as you're hitting the gym or hitting the track or hitting the roads, your feet are pounding the pavement, I'm good. You're moving. Do you know only 1% of people in this world actually run a marathon? 1%. Among the 6 billion people, 1%. So what's stopping you? Are you an able bodied individual? Can you get up and go to the bathroom, do your things, and go to school, go to work? So you're a perfect candidate to get fit. Where we start trading off our physical wellness is I'm busy. That's the biggest lie you bought into, that you're so busy that you can neglect your health. In India, there's a wonderful story of what is called a golden goose, and I want to share it with you. There was a farmer who was obviously falling in bad times, and all he had were a bunch of animals and a few chicken and a few creatures in the farm. As he was selling off his animals, he was really shrinking in his wealth. One day, when he goes into his barn, he sees in the area where the chicken were there, he found a golden egg. And that golden egg was given by one of its goose. He had a golden goose. It suddenly laid a golden egg. And the farmer was thrilled to bits because obviously now they can escape the spiral of this poverty. So he goes to the market, he sells it. Suddenly they have a comfort for a few more days and they sleep well at night that night. Next day, to their surprise, they find another golden egg, and so on and so forth. Within a week, they have 7 golden eggs, and the farmer and his wife and his children are over the moon. They say, all our financial troubles are gone. Now we can build a big house in the village, and everybody will look at our house and say, there goes a rich man. And they are beginning to dream dreams about their future. And the farmer's wife one day comes to him and says, look, every day one golden egg is not good enough. Why don't we just cut open and see how many eggs that goose has? And the farmer tries to dissuade her and say, no, 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 it doesn't work like that. We'll have to be patient. Let it give one golden egg every day. But the woman wouldn't listen. She nags him, and finally coerces him into going and cutting open the goose's tummy. And much to their horror, they do not find any golden eggs. The way you treat your body is actually the way you treat a golden goose. A healthy body will allow a vibrant spirit to live within it. In fact, the shoe brand Asics in Latin means a healthy spirit inside a healthy body. You can't do earth shattering things if your body is not absolutely well. And the way you feel well, the way you feel vital in your energy levels is if you take good care with your energies, the way you invest yourself, the way you will treat that as a non-negotiable aspect of your daily calendar. If you train your body, training your mind becomes an automatic outcome. But if you don't train your body, all sorts of feelings of tiredness, lacklusterness, and low energy levels affect your moods, and your mood swings will never let you be a very joyful person. And then people will start shunning you, and then you're going down a spiral of illness. One of the reason obesity has become such a big problem in this country is because children who were joyful in the playground back in the day when they were much younger are now getting hooked to screens, and they don't want to move away from their screens. And so we are going slowly towards a society that does not value physical strength and energy as it used to be done earlier. So, intellectual growth, physical vitality, two important components that make up for your purpose. We'll visit a little more of how do you build these elements into your growth, and how do you work towards a career or a journey that will make a lasting impact in your world in the next video.